Now, over the weekend, there was a horrific shooting at a nightclub in Orlando, Florida. Now, according to various outlets, 50 people were killed and 53 were injured when a gunman walked into the Pulse nightclub, armed with an AR-15 and a semi-automatic handgun, and it began firing at the crowd indiscriminately. Now, police, of course, were called, and they ended up getting into a fatal gun battle with the shooter, who was, of course, killed, and he's identified as 29-year-old Omar Mateen. So no, already you're going to see the name and be like, oh, great, Muslim. Trump was right. The immigrants are coming. Well, not really. I have some information. I want to break down a bit of Omar's history and try to figure out what exactly happened. I mean, who is this guy? Why did he do what he did? All right. So first off, he's not an immigrant. His father was an immigrant. Omar Mateen was actually born in New York and eventually moved to Florida, where he pretty much made like zero friends and had allegedly been very, very violent towards his ex-wife named Satora Yusufi. Now, on that, she described him as, quote, bipolar and emotionally disturbed with a violent temper. Bipolar and emotionally disturbed. That is exactly the kind of guy you want to give a gun. Of course. I mean, don't you want to give those guys guns who are emotionally disturbed? Because it seems like that's who often does these and does these mass shootings and gets these high-powered weapons. Now, she said that she had been beaten and otherwise physically abused by Mateen during outbursts in which he would express hatred towards everything. She also said he would often get into fights with his parents, but as I was the only one in his life, most of the violence was directed towards me. Great. So, obviously, history, if she's to be believed, and I see no reason not to, he's had a history of violence. A short history of violence, and one where there was just so much anger. Not only that, but she said he aspired to be a police officer and had worked as a correctional officer at a detention center for juvenile delinquents in Fort Pierce, Florida, and had once sought admission to a police academy. Now, he didn't get into a police academy, but eventually he did make it into a private security firm. So this guy was working for a for-profit security firm in Florida tasked to guard government property. Well, of course, if you do that, if you're a private security firm, you basically have to have a gun. So this guy is armed. Great. So you have a guy who hated everything and wanted to have power over people, wanted to have some sort of institutional power. Great. And he was armed. Awesome. But of course, now you're saying, you're probably saying, Jeff, look, you're ignoring the most important thing about this entire story. The elephant in the room. Well, what is that? He's a Muslim. That's it. It was Islamic jihadist terrorism, and that's it. I mean, let's ignore the apparent emotional issues, the possible mental issues, and chalk it up to just him being one of them violent Muslims. I mean, that's it. That's the only part of the story you ever have to really pay attention to, right? He's a Muslim. He's a Muslim. Now, look. Yes, he was Muslim. That's undeniable. That's a fact, right? And look, I'm not convinced, though, that just being a Muslim is the most important, or is the only reason that he went off in this gay nightclub. Was there homophobia involved? Due to religion? Absolutely. In fact, there's a lot of Muslim countries out there where being gay is punishable by death. Saudi Arabia happens to be one of them. Pakistan, Iran, all those countries, right? You also have some Christian countries where at least they tried to get gay people killed for being gay. Thankfully, that did not happen. But look, to say that there aren't places where, Muslims kill gay people for being gay, well, that's counterfactual. I want to deal with the facts here, right? There are also these same places where being an atheist is also punishable by death. Or being a non-Muslim. Those are facts, man. Those are the facts on the ground. I happen to think that their ideology is bullshit. I'm just saying. I'm not religious, right? But you also have to say that, you can't deny that not all religious people want to kill gays. I know a lot of religious people. I have religious people in my family. I have gay people in my family. They're not trying to kill each other. Okay? I have a very, very devout family members. And I know I'm using an anecdote, but I'm sure a lot of you can find similar anecdotes where being a religious person doesn't automatically turn you into an anti-gay bigot who's out to kill people just because they're gay. There are different degrees, variances, right? You can be a very, very fundamentalist guy. And you might think that that's okay to kill gay people. But that's very, I think, rare. At least in America. Now, in some of these Muslim countries, yeah, they think like that. But that's not to say that it's all Muslims. But anyway, and ironically, that's also something that fundamentalist Christians and fundamentalist Muslims have in common. Both really don't like gay people and would be okay with killing them, which I think is just absolutely disgusting. So, the question is, was he a fundamentalist? And if so, how did he get radicalized in Florida? Well, according to some of his old friends, if he did get radicalized, it had to have been fairly recently. Now, this comes from Samuel King, who was 1 year ahead of Mateen, said the two often spoke after Mateen graduated in 2004. Now, King waited tables at Ruby Tuesdays at Treasure Coast Square, which is basically a mall where Mateen worked out at GNC. Now, King, who was openly gay, said he knew Mateen until 2009 and did not appear to be anti-gay. Quote, "What is shocking to me," he says, "is that the majority of the staff at Ruby Tuesdays, where I worked, there was gay. He was clearly not anti-gay, at least not back then. He did not show any hatred to any of us. Something must have changed since I last saw him." Well, I'd say something major must have happened. Now, Mateen's father, Amir Sadiq, who has his own issues, told NBC News that the massacre was not related to his religion. No. It's not religion at all. No, it doesn't have anything to do with the fact that he's a Muslim. And I would agree to a point, except when you get into fundamentalism. So is it fundamentalism? It might just be. Because he also added that his son turned angry when he saw two men kissing in Miami a couple of months ago. Now, according to CBS, his father has some well-known anti-American views and is an ideological supporter of the Afghan Taliban. Oh boy. A message posted by the father on Facebook, which has since been deleted, shows that he could have passed his anti-gay views onto his son. In the video, he said, quote, "God will punish those involved in homosexuality," but then added, "It's not an issue humans should deal with." Okay, so it wasn't his religion, according to him, that made him angry at the gay people. It was just seeing them happy and seeing them kiss. I don't know, man. If it's not fundamentalism, what is it? Why would somebody get angry over two guys that were kissing and then drive 100 miles out of his way to shoot up a nightclub months later? That doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. It seems like sometime after 2009, this guy just went off the rails. So much so that he got investigated by the FBI for apparently praising terrorists. Great. Now, this is according to Reuters. The FBI had twice interviewed Mateen for having suspected ties to Islamist militants. That first investigation took place in 2013 when Mateen made inflammatory comments to co-workers that indicated a sympathy for militants. And this is according to FBI Special Agent Ron Hopper. Now, this guy also worked at a private security firm up until the shooting. Now, that's important because he was required to carry a gun for the job. Now, also important was how his coworkers had seen him. See, at that point, his coworkers has described him as angry. Daniel Kim, a security guard employed along with Mateen at the G4S in Fort Pierce area, said he met Mateen briefly about 3 or 4 times. Quote, Every time I saw him, he never smiled. If you said good morning, he'd just walk right by you. Like he had a chip on his shoulder. Daniel Gilroy, who said he was a co-worker of Mateen's at G4S, said that Mateen's anger was constant. Quote, anytime a female or a black person would come by, he would use horrible words. Now hold on. Now think about that for a second, right? Hold on here. Right-wing media right now is immediately playing up the fact that he was a registered Democrat. Now to me, that doesn't really sound like much of a good liberal. Saying horrible things about women and black people. Not good, right? No, what he seemed to be is a person who was angry and unstable, and someone who clearly didn't like people who were different. Gay people, women, or minorities. Someone who might be susceptible to, fundamentalist religion. He literally pledged allegiance to ISIS during the shooting. Since I guess to him that group was some sort of inspiration. Now, of course, there wasn't a direct link. It's not like ISIS was saying, okay, go shoot up a gay nightclub. No, he looked at ISIS and was like, yeah, those are my guys. They hate gay people too, and they hate minorities. Great. Awesome. Well, not awesome. Terrible. So basically now we know that this guy was an angry, possibly mentally unstable person who basically lately just started hating gay people, as well as being a alleged wife beater and being investigated by the FBI for apparently looking up to terrorists and militants. Now with all that stuff, I kind of got to ask, how did he get a gun legally again? Or I guess the better question would be, how did he keep his job at a private security firm where he was, armed? See, here's a problem, right? This whole thing is like a toxic stew. Or a powder keg. It's going to explode. All these different factors, right? Mental illness, fundamentalist religion, and easy access to guns. All those things put together have ended up shattering the lives of hundreds of people. And I'm not just talking about the victims here. I'm talking about the families of the victims, friends, loved ones. I mean, it's heartbreaking to know that they're never going to see those people again. Not to mention the ones that survived, who are going to always carry the scars of this horrible tragedy. We've got to do something about guns. We've got to do something about mental illness. And we have to do something about fundamentalist religion of all stripes. Because unless we do something about all three of these things, we take a varied approach and not just blame one thing or the other, well, we're not going to get anywhere. And people like this will unfortunately do horrible acts of terror and death. Got to stop them.